Hey guys, welcome back. So with us getting back into the Carnage series, for me, it really wasn't until I read this issue where I started to realize how much sense this series makes. Cause you guys already know, after Death of the Venomverse, I was ready for God Carnage to go for Eddie Brock's jugular. But after reading Carnage issue 2, now I'm starting to believe that we need some things to happen in this series before we get to the huge showdown. And I'll tell you guys what I mean as we make our way through the course of this. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so jumping in, we pick up somewhere in America. And I mean like that's what it says. And as we do, we start out with the Carnage symbiote, who recently returned to Earth 616 and created a new host for itself by consuming a prison inmate and terraforming his physical body to recreate its own new version of Cletus Cassidy, to where from there Carnage continues its journey on figuring out what type of god he is, which is what took us to the church concept that we saw in the first issue. But now we find Carnage in the new Cletus, chasing this guy down by the name of Mark Johnson, who's a senior sales evangelist. And with how this plays out, Carnage just pretty much kills this guy. And on the surface, it would seem like this is just some random murder, and he even makes it sound that way, because the new Cletus Cassidy, who has a lot of the original Cletus Cassidy's memories, he makes a reference to Cassidy's first victim after bonding with the Carnage symbiote, who was a guy named Gunther Stein that was randomly selected out of a phone book. And just before killing Mark Johnson, he asked him if he thinks that there's any value to him remembering Gunther Stein's name, as he goes on to say, "No, neither do I." And really it's just an opening sequence that's gonna pay off over the course of time, because there is a pattern that's associated with Carnage's victims, like we assumed before. But it isn't until here where we go back to Flash, where we see the threads to the murder mystery being connected that were laid out by Carnage, which, like we saw, this is what he wants. But right now we find Flash looking over the details he's put together while going through what looks to be news reels on his phone, just swiping through and getting whatever additional information that he can. Because Flash notices, for the most part, the mainstream media is only focusing on Nathaniel Jones, the billionaire playboy. But on these reels, Flash is seeing more of the conspiracy theories as he swipes through, because some people are asking if Nathaniel Jones was also a murderer, like some of the other victims. And then you got one girl who's like, yo, these are all the names of disciples: Nathaniel, Matthew, Philip, which right there just had me like, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. And then you have another guy on one of these reels who has his face blurred out, saying that C left questions at the crime scene, with the question being, where's Peter, where's John? And let me know in the comments what Peter and what John are the first that come to mind when you hear that. But seeing that last reel, it set off something for Flash, because he's like, okay, they're calling him C now, just the letter C. Because again, for Flash, one of the reasons he's being so thorough about this is because he really needs to be sure that Cletus Cassidy is behind this. And not so much because he doesn't believe it, because his symbiote has just been nudging at him this whole time. But Flash wants to make sure that he can prove it, outside of what his symbiote sense and his gut feeling have been telling him. But amongst what he's gathered, there's 7 people dead, all within 12 hours, all in different states. And they're all numbered, with the billionaire Nathaniel Jones being number 12, which likely means that there are 5 other victims missing. And again, there's a huge discrepancy between what Flash is seeing reported from the mainstream media and what he's finding from smaller independent outlets online. Because the mainstream media, who again is focusing on Nathaniel, and likely just for the ad revenue, they're calling this the impossible murder, since Nathaniel was taken from his penthouse and killed in broad daylight. But they're not asking the right questions. They're not asking to what end. And eventually, the way that Flash sees it, the mainstream outlets aren't connecting these different murders because it would take a leap of faith to believe that the same person is behind it. Which, like we saw in the first issue, that's pretty much what Carnage wants. So for Flash, as he's watching this live stream that's being broadcasted by a guy named Travis Truth, who's really one of those kind of people that make conspiracies out of everything. So for Flash, while he's watching this guy, he's like, you know what? In order to truly get to the bottom of this, he's got to make someone like this Travis Truth guy out to actually be right. Because it's going to take a bit of that unconventional thinking, as well as getting into the headspace of someone who sees everything as evil in order to truly connect the dots. And the funny thing is, for a moment here, we actually head over to Travis Truth as he's ending the field report of his live stream, with his name being Travis Brookfield. But the funny thing is, when we go over to him, we see that he's streaming from his mom's basement with no pants on. And it's just like, oh man, we seeing the truth for real now. But after this, when we head back to the Carnage symbiote, we see him having a conversation with the new Cletus Cassidy. And as it turns out, the new Cletus is curious about the previous one, which for a moment has the symbiote asking if this Cletus believes that the previous one could be a threat. So the new Cletus tells him that's not the case, but instead, the old Cletus is a threat, and the new Cletus just wants to pull on it, which from here takes them on a journey of tracking him down, while also continuing to build the Church of Carnage. But also in this conversation, the new Cletus asks the Carnage symbiote a question, which turns out to be like a running theme throughout this issue, because he asks the symbiote, what's the difference between a madman and a prophet? And then the Carnage symbiote is just like, imagination? Branding? A good pair of robes? I don't know. But the new Cletus doesn't say whether he's satisfied with that answer or not. But going forward, we'll find that he'll ask this question to other people and everyone's answer is different. And from here, when we head back over to Flash, we find that he's made his way back to the pub and restaurant, Poor Decisions. And I really like that name. I feel like I said it before, but I'm just gonna say it again. But as soon as he gets here, he's apologizing to Arya for what happened last time he was here, when he broke up that fight and started roughing up one of the guys a bit too much. But Arya, she's not even worried about it, and she goes on to tell Flash that there's a woman here waiting for him. And you can tell by the way that Arya is saying it that she's a bit curious about who this woman is, as well as what's the dynamic between her and Flash, because Flash hasn't quite picked it up yet, but Arya's been checking him out. But it's here where we find out that the woman who was waiting on Flash is actually Liz Allen, because he was hoping that he could get some help with what has been a solo investigation on Cletus Cassidy so far. And for Flash, he's not even completely sure if he can totally trust Liz, you know, with her being CEO of Alchemax. And I mean, we're not even gonna get into all the crazy stuff we've seen in the Venom series so far. But right away, Liz, she tells Flash that Cletus Cassidy's dead. He was melted by Iron Man and Carnage reigns, and the link to the full videos down in the description just below the like button. And those are her words, not mine. But she goes on to tell him that it's possible that the symbiote may have survived. But Flash isn't talking about possibilities here. He's certain that this is Cassidy. But again, Flash just doesn't have the evidence to prove this outside of what he feels. But after some time, we also find that Liz has brought Flash a folder containing information that Alchemax has on Carnage, because the strain they have is showing that it's still susceptible to anti-venom. But they're also aware that Carnage has evolved beyond that. So she just leaves the folder with Flash. But before she heads out, Flash gives her a note that was drawn out with blood, and he tells her that it doesn't seem to be from the same source, at least not on the same day. Which is interesting, since we now know the connection to this symbol in Meridius' garden, as well as Eddie's time travel from the Venom series. But we're not going to dig too deep into that just yet, because we'll see where this is going with it soon enough. But Flash gives Liz this note so she can take it back to the lab tonight and hopefully figure out what kind of blood it is or who it belongs to, because Flash just doesn't have those kind of resources. And as Liz gets ready to go, she tells Flash that she'll look into it, but don't go looking for trouble. And you can tell with her saying that, it messes with Flash's head a little bit, because even after Liz leaves, he asked Arya if she thinks that he's looking for trouble. But right away, Arya, she's not even shy to express that she's glad it wasn't actually a date. And she's kind of sized up Liz, and she's already aware that Liz is the type that's keeping some secrets, which is an accurate assessment. But to answer Flash's question about him being someone who's looking for trouble, Arya tells him that he's not the type of person who goes looking for it, but when he sees it, he doesn't look away. And there's a difference between the two. But just before he leaves, Arya makes sure to tell him in a more direct way that she's glad he wasn't on a date. And then from here, we go back to Carnage and the new Cletus, who end up picking up a hitchhiker along their way. And when this guy gets in the car, he's just like, "Don't worry, man, I'm not an axe murderer or anything." Which is kind of funny when you think about who he's getting in the car with. And as they're heading along, the new Cletus asks this guy, what's the difference between a madman and a prophet? And this guy just goes on to say how a prophet is speaking the divine truth. So if you're telling your own truth, you're a prophet for the universe. But it's only after 10 minutes of driving where the new Cletus finds out that this guy's name is Mark, and he's just like, oh man, that's gotta be a sign. So he ends up driving the car off a cliff and slaughtering the poor fella. Which again, these murders just lead into the larger picture of what Carnage is working on. Because through the course of this, we're also told that this is the 5th Mark that they've killed today, which is likely just leading into the whole mystery aspect. But also after killing this guy, they use his blood to write over the sign that says welcome to New Market to make it just say the Book of Mark, which then catches the attention of another guy passing by, so they just kill him too. But one of the things that makes this location significant is that Cletus Kasady came here for his first field trip back when he was a kid at St. Est's Orphanage, which again, this is just something that the new Cletus Kasady knows because the Carnage symbiote loaded these memories into him when he created him out of that inmate we saw in the last issue. But one of the things that makes these memories so significant is that they almost play out as breadcrumbs in a way, because the new Cletus remembers one of the other kids from the orphanage saying that the sewers in New Market are probably nicer than their rooms back at the St. Est's Orphanage. But as the new Cletus is saying this story out loud, while walking through the sewers of New Market, another voice coming from someone else in these sewers is finishing his sentences. And eventually we come to find out that that is the voice of the old Cletus Kasady, who has made his home here since he couldn't go back to St. Est's Orphanage after the events of Carnage reigns. And yeah, this is the reason why I'm starting to believe that we need this series to happen before the final showdown between Carnage and Eddie Brock, because for the past couple of years, the story of Carnage and Cletus, they've gone their separate ways. And for that reason, I truly think we need to get some kind of resolve between them before we get to the huge god level final battle. But as the new Kasady approaches the old Kasady, sitting on his throne of body parts, he asks him the question, what's the difference between a madman and a prophet? And the old Carnage tells him, the difference is the audience. Which just sounds like we're heading into season 2 of the Cletus Kasady show. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/Dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.